Well, good morning. I mean, it's not morning, it's afternoon. It's afternoon lunch with the broker. I kind of messed that up. So it was supposed to be breakfast with the broker every Tuesday at 9 a.m. But you know what? We have a very special guest, and 9 a.m. would be pretty early for this guest. So I certainly wanted to accommodate and move that to 1 o'clock because, you know, that's if anything we learned how to, as they say, pivot, right? We learned how to be flexible and not saying, you know what, this podcast has to be at 9 a.m. It has to be about good content, about valuable content. We're looking to, really perpetuate professionalism in this industry. We're about collaboration within the industry, and we really want to push everyone forward. To be more of a team. We're not competitors. We're collaborators, and that's what we do. And we want to give you massive value in this. So, without further ado, and now, by way of British Columbia, Canada, he is the Regional Executive Vice President of RE/MAX Western Canada LLC. He consistently supports Children's Miracle Network, winning the highest contributing RE/MAX region for 12 consecutive years. Amazing. He was a professional cattle fitter I got to ask him about this, but he was a professional cattle fitter at livestock shows and auctions. He is a husband, a father of 4 girls. I'm only a father of 3, so you win. And a farmer. He loves curling, golf, and sailing. He is the one, the only Elton Ash.
Hey!
There he is.
Great to be with you, David.
Listen, Elton, I really, really appreciate it. And, I think, I think our viewers are in for a treat because, first of all, you've been, through a lot of the ups, downs, sideways, and all around. And I'd love to hear some of your input. But before we get into our input in the real estate market in Western Canada, how are you doing? How's Western Canada doing in general? I understand through the pandemic, there are certain things that restrictions that were put upon a lot of the people, broker owners, agents in that region. And tell us a little bit about how you are and where you're at now.
Well, yeah, David, it certainly has been an interesting 16, 17 months, which is, as you say that number, it seems like, wow, how could it be this long? But we've all lived it since we gathered in R4 a year and a half ago, which was the last major event most of us have gone to. And so, yeah, and Canada has been an interesting experience. Now, for Western Canada, which includes 35 million square miles, believe it or not, 4 provinces, 2 territories, and we have 276 offices, 6,300 sales associates here in Western Canada. The area, real estate was deemed an essential service. Now, that wasn't true across the country. In the province of Quebec, which is out, in the eastern part of the country, straight north of the state of New York, it was not an essential service, and the entire real estate industry with notaries and lawyers just shut down. If you can imagine that, what a freaking nightmare that must have been. And yet, RE/MAX in Quebec continued to do very well. So, talk about an interesting scenario. So, out west here, essential service, of course, like everywhere else, April, May, a year ago was total shutdown, but then it started to come back in July, and then August, and then September, and then October. It was like the wheels fell off of everything. The velocity was so hard and furious. And that has continued till about a month ago, and then inventory levels started increasing. But it's been a wild ride.
So what powers the real estate market in Western Canada? Because, it's kind of another world, right? Because, you look at South Florida and, we're in our little bubble and you could see the beach in the background, in my virtual background, whatever. But, it's such different. You have different needs, different, requirements. there are different people moving in, demographically and such. So what powers the Western Canadian region?
Well, it's not a whole lot different. It is right now the move over buyer, the homeowner that is changing, and quite frankly, I'm sure it's a similar situation. And the pandemic causing people to really analyze their existing lifestyle, where they're living, what their home is. There was, of course, the millennials driving urban living, for the past 6-7 years. And that was sort of going to be the new norm. Everybody wanted to be downtown near the rapid transit, whatever, sort of thing. Didn't want the commutes. And then the pandemic hit, and that previous trend seemed to be where the industry was going. And yet the pandemic hits and people start to realize, I'm working from my home. I got the kids underfoot. My spouse is working too. We're sharing the dining room table. We're trying to do homeschooling or online learning and all this sort of stuff. And suddenly the light bulb went on and said, yeah, no, this 650 square foot studio condo in downtown Vancouver that we just paid 1.4 million for isn't really what we need, when we could buy a 2,400 square foot single detached home on a third of an acre out in Kelowna, British Columbia, which is where I live, a 5-hour drive from downtown Vancouver, for 1.1 million. We'll pocket a cool $350,000 and live like kings, right? And that is, so this move over buyer segment has really powered the entire market. And that, I think, is probably pretty similar there as well in occasions, eh?
No, you're absolutely right. And where did the A come from? I still don't understand that. I watch these hockey games and they all go A, and I just kind of like the Canadian A. So
I guess Bob and Doug McKenzie.
It's awesome. So, but I know. Listen, I mean, you're absolutely right. The move over buyer has really, really gone. And I haven't heard that term before, but I do like it. Has really helped, empowered. And the crazy thing is like you look across the country, you look across both Canada and the United States. Like there are very few areas, maybe pockets, that are not on fire right now. I mean, they are just killing it. And, the real estate market. So you just start to wonder, like, how is that possible? There's got to be a segment. It's not like all of a sudden, we have suddenly that many less units available to us, or that many more people. It's just crazy how the entire real estate market in both the United States and Canada have really just exploded.
Yeah, and certainly, as you mentioned, there were segments of the market that were slower to react. The condominium segment is a prime example. Pretty much nationally across the entire country here is that the single family detached took off there in that August-September period, and condos languished. But there was a huge oversupply of brand new condos. You look at downtown Toronto, downtown Vancouver, Calgary. That was simply the market situation, but they got absorbed slowly through that time period. So now condos, well, back in January, we're in the same situation. We're being fueled by this whole market. But interestingly enough, as I briefly alluded to earlier, the last 3 weeks now, we are starting to see a calming of the marketplace. We're not going, and Chris Alexander, who's my counterpart for RE/MAX Ontario Atlantic Canada, and I released a joint statement nationally to the press that got picked up, that we felt that the industry had to really look at professionalism in the business. And of course, RE/MAX is known for being the top producers in the business, having the longest experience, and having that very professional element with the way that we serve our customers and clients. And so we had actually we thought it should be an industry stance. And so we actually contacted a couple of our competitors in Canada. It's Royal LePage is our number one competitor. And say, hey, we want to, as an industry, look at how this is all these multiple offer, blind bidding situations, and how buyers were stressed, and actually sellers too in a lot of cases. And so and they didn't want to participate, so that's fine. We then, which got our statement on this professionalism thing really got picked up by the media across the country. And I'm actually doing a couple of strategic planning sessions now with a couple of the provincial associations now out of this whole thing. But I think as market leaders, and in Canada, we have 34% market share, and we have about 18% of the realtor population with RE/MAX. On the Canadian Real Estate Association, which is the NAR equivalent for Canada, out of the 13 or 14 directors, 6 are RE/MAX affiliates. And so we felt this responsibility as an organization to talk about professionalism in the business. So yeah, it's been an interesting thing.
It's awesome. And I've gone through strategic planning as well in our associations and such. And, the one thing that continues to come up is, broker supervision and or liability, because we have a significant issue in our industry, at least in South Florida, is what I know. And we have a lack of professionalism. When you have a hot market the way that this is, and you have leverage, or a listing agent has leverage, to use that leverage to benefit yourself, it's really to a detriment of everyone else. So instead of, you're helping one person yourself and, really disappointing 25 others, and it gets it basically it's multiplied, because all their families are disappointed. All they're talking about, what's going on and such. And, and sometimes when, there are no brokers to respond to, they don't respond, and, they don't want to resolve things. So, we definitely have an issue. I hope that cooler heads can prevail. And when the market does become more of a balanced market, we could sit down and really talk about collaboration and professionalism, because, these companies that are coming out there, their business model, quite honestly, is to not, to hire anyone, but not to supervise them. And that can't be done.
Yeah. And not serve the consumer's best interest, to serve, the competitor, which we shall not name, perhaps.
No.
They had a downline, multi-level,
and listen, and before, and I have a lot of friends that are in all different brands, and a lot of viewers that are all different brands. And this isn't one company, because listen, there are bad RE/MAX agents. There are bad every agents, right? So, and they're bad brokers. They're bad RE/MAX brokers, just like there's everywhere else. So this is not, to me, brand specific, but sometimes you have companies that are business models that are specific to really the lack of broker supervision. I think some of them are understanding that and starting to put team leaders in place and such, but we have to as an industry, have to band together and help each other. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Elton. Sorry.
No, you're exactly correct, David. And this is a topic that could be debated for hours, of course. But I think it's important when you have markets like we've just been experiencing and continue to experience in many, many places, the stress that buyers, especially right now, feel, or flip-flop to the Great Recession, especially in South Florida. And I was attending a meeting in Miami, I think it was in November. I was down there November 2009, excuse me, and again in October of 2010, and seeing those vacant condo towers downtown. And so there's stresses, no matter what the cycle is going on. And ultimately, professionalism is critical for the long-term longevity of our profession. Period, right?
So how do you achieve professionalism? NAR came out with C2X designation. I could tell you right now, one of the best things that they've ever come out with. The C2X designation is awesome. It really it talks about scenarios. It puts you through scenarios. It's not something where you could sit online and do it in 30 minutes, even though it's a 14-hour course or whatever. Some of these continuing ed jokes that they put out, but C2X is really a designation that it takes, a lot of times it takes a month. Some people, take 2 or 3 months. So I love, their push for C2X. But the one thing I'll say is that, we only have, a handful of C2X, designations or across, the country. And you're looking at professionalism and how you're getting it. Well, you need to empower the brokers. You need to empower the region reps, the region people, not just through, and this, calls for all brands. The brokers really need to take some more responsibility in the training and ethics that these people are going out in, and saying, what, if one of my agents is wrong, it's okay to say, hey, my agent was wrong. We're going to try and help resolve this issue.
Yeah, there has to be accountability for that to occur, and ultimately that ends up being the regulator. That because ultimately it has to be the license that would be held responsible, and that's the regulator's job. The debate here in Canada and British Columbia is the regulator can also go too far, and we've seen that. For example, double ending now has been taken right out. The regulator doesn't allow it any longer. What you have to do, excuse me, is have, say I've got the listing and you're the buyer, you come see my home at a virtual open house tour through Matterport, or in the old days, come to the open house and I like this house, I want to write an offer. Today in British Columbia, I would have to do that with you as an unrepresented buyer, which opens up all kinds of potential litigation, or refer you to another realtor. And that is an example of a regulator moving too far. And so there's always this balance of debate that goes on. And I think, we have to understand, and in Canada with the Canadian Real Estate Association and their code of ethics, which they just, for lack of a better description, refreshed 2 years ago through strategic planning, and then bring it down to the provincial associations, down to the boards. But there's a lack of teeth in it, again, because what can you do as an association? So it's just an interesting thing. Ultimately, it boils down to accountability, as you said, Dave.
Yeah, and what people don't realize is that they look at double-sided and they say, oh, well, a buyer is going to buy something from a listing agent who's representing technically the seller's interests, but, in South Florida, and Florida in general, I mean, you are a transaction broker unless otherwise stated. So, when you're looking at a transaction, you're there to facilitate the transaction. Well, technically, I mean, it's in the seller and buyer's interest to have one agent to deal with, right? Seller, the listing agent has all the information. They had to disseminate most of that information unless the seller says, don't say something and it's not, legal or materially affecting the property. But I mean, you would want, when we talk about professionalism, you would want to be able to trust one agent to handle one transaction as opposed to two agents. Oh, yeah. It doesn't mean that we want to do that. It just means that, we want to be able to work with the network and collaboration of people that we know, because we know that their buyers are real and that they're going to end up getting to the end of the closing table, right?
Oh, yeah. And ultimately, when it comes to consumer protection and regulator responsibilities on this, unfortunately, what occurs, and again, with firsthand experience here, it's this small minority that affect, because the vast majority of realtors are professional in the way that they deal with the fiduciary responsibilities and representing, and the homeowner likes the idea of their realtor having the buyer, and the buyer likes the idea of their realtor, being on side with the seller too, because there's this sense of confidence that the vast majority feel that the knowledge is there, the understanding on both sides of the equation. It's just unfortunate you have this, like I've said, this small minority that abuse it, and then we all end up paying the price.
So what's I don't know if you know this information offhand, but like, what's the average sale price if I say Western Canada, that's a big area, but we'll go with Vancouver because, people really gravitate to Vancouver.
Yeah, the average sale price in the city of Vancouver for single detached homes right now is around 1.8 million.
Okay.
Canadian, 30% exchange rate, but so it's a deal in US dollars. But that is, Vancouver is the most expensive market in the country. If you looked at nationally, it's 470,000 round number, 475 and change. And that's the national average price. And that has seen a year-over-year increase of nearly 30% this past year. But of course, interest rates for all of us across, it doesn't matter what side of the border we're on, historically low rates, great time to take advantage of. The pandemic has, of course, the savings, the money that's sitting in savings accounts right now doing nothing is in the trillions of dollars.
Right.
People, they haven't done their trips. They haven't, they've been hibernating in their basement. And so there's a lot of money out there. And so when you start looking at what this cycle is going to, economic cycle, the general economic cycle, where it's going, it's kind of scary, because I've been in this business 40 plus years now, licensed as a realtor. And I've seen every cycle, you name it. And there's always a cycle, up and down. It's never, if it's ever flat, it's like 3 months.
Right.
And so you're going up or you're going down. As an old friend of mine who is a stock market guy, has always said he makes money no matter what the market's doing, the stock market. It's like that for realtors in a way. People got to sell or they got to buy, and we're there to represent them. And so where this goes, I'm really hoping that we're going to see, with the inventory coming on now, there's a pent up supply issue here that's coming onto the market now. And that we're not going to see the multiple bidding that we've seen. That's already started to abate. And that we just get more of a gentle, famous last words, more of a gentle easing here, so that we're anticipating Q1 22 to be a pretty balanced market with the way things are going. And the overall economic cycle looks pretty positive. You look at the Bank of Canada or the Fed in the US and what they're predicting, for coming up. I know that the Canadian dollar has suffered recently because the Fed is signaling an increase of rates, and the Bank of Canada hasn't. And so that affects the currency valuation. Anyway, it's interesting.
So what kind of inventory is coming on the market? Are these foreclosures? Are these inventory that, people are testing the market? What kind of inventory is on the market? It's certainly not foreclosures. In fact, our, what's the name of it? It's not forbearance.
Is at historical lows. And a lot of that because the Canadian government stepped in with these economic plans that people, you didn't even really, all you had to do is sign your name and send it in. You got $2,000, a month, which was a great plan. It certainly helped, especially in the service trades. If you're in the hospitality industry, the restaurant dining industry, you were
crushed,
right? And so that helped tremendously. So as a result, though, so the everything that's coming into the market now is really pretty typical the move over buyer segment, as I mentioned earlier. But there are always those who plan to move, for whatever, that become empty nesters, have the new baby. I mean, both ends of that scale. Retired, new job promotion, you name it, the various reasons that come into people's lives, and that has all been put on hold in essence. And that's what caused the lack of inventory. But now people are, and it was put on hold because people were scared. They didn't know, especially a year ago, about COVID and what it was all going to be, and how do you show your home safely. And of course, realtors, our industry, is a late adopter of technology use. And so the 3D tours, but to use the overworked adjective pivot, we all pivoted, right? And we're doing this now. And so we're playing catch up. But the bottom line is homeowners were just not confident in putting their home. Well, they are now. The vaccination rates in Canada now, it's about 73% have received their first vaccination. We're lagging behind you in the US with our second vaccinations, but we're now full steam ahead there. The goal with many, and the provinces control that, probably similar to the states. Anyway, the goal for many of the provinces to be at that 70, which is the benchmark, 70% double full vaccination rate by the end of July. So that's creating confidence. People are, I'm going to put my home in the market now. I've delayed for all this time. So that's where we're going to see this inventory spike, this increase.
Interesting.
And also the buyer demand has been satiated pretty much. And so it's going to be, that's why we're really pretty strongly believe this balanced market is in our future.
Well, you kind of insulted the buyer, right? As a market, we kind of said, you know what, Mr. Buyer, and I don't know if you've ever seen the TikTok with the apple. This is an apple and whatever. I mean, it's just, I want to sell this apple. If you haven't ever seen that, you gotta check that out, because it is literally our market. Sellers, getting ridiculous offers, crazy overappraised values. They're waiving the appraisals and all this stuff. And we've said, well, Mr. Buyer, you can't, you have to only see the property from 11 to 12:30 on a Saturday, and you're going to be there with 500 people, other people that are going to want to buy it, and we don't care whether we don't care whether you have cash or whatever you do, right? This is our terms, and we want to stay and post-occupy the property for 6 months or whatever stupid things they come up with because they have leverage. Well, the buyers remember that, right? So a lot of these buyers have gotten out of the market. We're going to see a little bit of, I think, we're always last to do it, but it usually starts in the West and comes a little east. We're a little slower down over in the east. So so we, it's going to come a time where, the inventory is going to start to increase. We've seen a little bit. We've seen where, it's funny because I listed a property the other day and it was on the market for like 12 or 13 days. And a buyer asked me, well, what's wrong with the property? I said, what do you mean? Well, it's only been on the market 12 or 13 days. People are like, they're conditioned, so, but it is funny. What are your mortgages still like 30-year fixed? Are they, very similar to the States? Do you have options? Are there a lot of guidelines and restrictions?
Yeah, we're quite different when it comes to the mortgage environment in Canada. There are no 30-year fixed or anything like that. What they are is, and we did get to a point back in during the Great Recession where the federal government, which controls the mortgage environment in general terms with rules and regulations, did provide a 30-year amortization period. But generally right now they're 25-year full amortization period, but with the option of variable rates totally variable with whatever the market's doing, to a 5-year fixed rate. And so first-time home buyers, for example, our youngest daughter just bought her first home in Edmonton, Alberta, here back in November last fall. And so Sarah Jane said, "Dad, what should I do for my mortgage?" And she was first-time home buyer. We helped, of course, the Bank of Mom and Dad helped out a bit with her down payment, and so she put 20% down on a 1,400 square foot townhouse, paid pretty reasonable from our point of view, $225,000 for. And so I said, "Well, Sarah Jane, you're a first time home buyer. You're just getting your career going. And so you should opt for as long a fixed term as you can get, which is a 5-year term. And then at the end of 5 years, you would renegotiate at whatever current terms are like that." And that's the mortgage environment in Canada. So right now, for example, she got that fixed 5-year term on a 25-year AM for 1.94%. I mean, free money for 5 years.
Wow.
I mean, inflation is 2%.
If you think about it, like, wow, like mortgage brokers must be killing it there, because every 5 years they're renegotiating.
Yeah.
Are they renegotiating with the banks, or are they renegotiating with these, they're having to refinance?
Typically, this is general terms only.
No, agreed. I'm just trying to find an overview of it.
Yeah, what Sarah Jane will do in 5 years, and she got her mortgage through a mortgage broker. But it is underwritten by one of the big 5 banks in Canada. You got Royal Bank, Bank of Commerce, Toronto Dominion, the big 5. And then you've got all the other lenders too, that the brokers also have access to. So typically what she'll do in 5 years is she'll get the notification from her broker who says, "Yeah, Sarah Jane, it's time to renegotiate your loan, and this is what I can get you at wherever," right? But the majority of Canadians will simply just refinance with that original lender. 80% of Canadians do that. And the broker doesn't even get involved for 80% of those deals. The lender sends a letter to the mortgagee and says, or the mortgagor, anyway, the guy that borrowed the money, and says to them, "Hey, it's up for renewal. This is the rate." And most people just, "Okay, fine, sign it, on with life for another 5-year fixed term." Of course, what I'll suggest to Sarah Jane is, call your broker if you don't hear from them or they've left the industry or something. Let's talk to a broker again and get you the best deal that we can, right? Let's not be overly loyal here, right?
No.
Yeah.
Agreed. So I always end and we went way over, so sorry about that. But I always end the show on 2 questions, and hopefully, do you watch streaming shows? Netflix?
One, yeah.
All right. So what's your favorite streaming show, and what are you currently watching?
Well, my favorite streaming show has been Vikings on Prime, and I'm waiting for the last 6 or 10 episodes to see of that, because it's wrapped up now. But I haven't seen them yet. I just finished watching, and of course, I'm glad you asked streaming, because I don't watch commercial TV. I can't stand it. Manifest, which is an NBC production, but it went to Netflix. And I found that as a cross. You can immediately tell I love history because of the Vikings, but I'm also into science fiction. And so I like these sorts of, like Lost, of course.
Right.
I watch Lost. And
except for the last episode.
But yeah, so I my wife gets mad at me because I'm a bit of a type A personality, but I get this focus, right? So I binge because I've just got to see it, right? Anyway,
I'm the same. Yeah, no, I'm the same. So, Elton, I really, really appreciate you dedicating all this time to our viewers and giving value and understanding, what Western Canada's market looks like, what Canada has done, and what continues to do. And we certainly appreciate your service to the real estate industry, including all the professionalism that you shine through. So thank you very much for joining us. And hopefully we will meet in person at R4 next year, if not sooner.
Well, hopefully, BOC this summer. Hope to be there. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Elton. Take care.